This is an audio check. Test 1, 2, 3, 4.
Perfect. Thank you.
Turn it on when you want to talk.
wanted to do that for a while. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the Committee on Small Business to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess to the committee at any time. The committee is here today to hear testimony about alternative paths to student debt, specifically surrounding career and technical education and how it can strengthen small businesses. I thank you all for being here to testify, and I would like to recognize myself for some opening comments. First, again, good morning and thanks for joining us today. I want to thank our witnesses for joining today. Your time here is extremely appreciated, and I look forward to your testimony. I'm very glad to have a constituent of mine, Mr. Bruno Schickel, the owner of Schickel Construction, as one of our witnesses here today, joining a good number of others. Mr. Schickel, thank you for your time and traveling from Ithaca, New York, to Washington, D.C. to share your perspective and on the various issues that our small business owners currently face. Today, the Subcommittee on Innovation, Entrepreneurship, and Workforce Development hearing will focus on several critical issues that are holding Main Street America back. First, there's no denying that small businesses, both in my district and, of course, every district across this country, are suffering from a workforce shortage crisis. As we travel around upstate New York, and I know my colleagues as they travel around their districts, we continue to hear from local businesses about how they cannot find enough people to work. Despite offering higher wages, cash bonuses, or other incentives, they still are unable to attract workers. Small businesses have limited resources at their disposal to recruit and retain the workforce they need. Every unfilled position represents a missed opportunity for small business to serve its local community, increase their bottom line, and grow their operation. This shortage is often exacerbated in rural communities like the ones I represent. This inability to fill jobs not only impacts storefronts on Main Street, but also employers of skilled trade workers. This includes our construction workers, plumbers, electricians, and so many more. And with a shortage of available workers, employers are having difficulty finding qualified employees to fill open positions due to increased competition for available workers and having to offer higher wages to retain them. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, of the top 20 occupations projected to see the biggest change in employment over the next 10 years, the majority are in careers that require training beyond high school, but less than a four-year degree. This means that millions of individuals who do not possess a four-year degree could have well-paid careers and obtain the necessary skills to fill these jobs, likely without needing to step onto a college campus. And this is all happening as the cost of traditional four-year education continues to climb, reaching record highs. This rising cost of four-year degrees have saddled nearly 43 million Americans with student loan debt equating to over $1.7 trillion. As a result, we are left to confront a massive student debt crisis and massive workforce shortage in skilled trades across the country. We should be promoting alternative education paths that are both more affordable and oftentimes more efficient than a typical four-year college degree, such as registered apprenticeship trade schools and more. In our current economic environment, we have to think practically and encourage our young people in particular to aspire to achieve success. As a former county executive in Dutchess County, New York, I've had first-hand experience creating training programs and seeing the benefits of these programs provide students. And during my tenure, we worked with various not-for-profit agencies, community centers, and other programs to help promote youth workforce development programs and overall worker readiness skills. And this gave students the skills they needed to go into various professions, including skilled labor jobs. One great alternative pathway to a four-year degree is career and technical education. In addition to being shorter and less expensive than a traditional four-year degree, CTE represents a complete range of career fields across the entire economy and is driven by the needs and demands of employers. Preparing students with technical skills needed to obtain higher-paying jobs, in-demand jobs, will prove to be crucial to bridging our nation's skills and workforce gap. And as policymakers, we must improve our understanding of workforce issues so we can prepare the next generation of workers and our small businesses that rely on these workers for success. I know today's hearing can help shape how Congress can work to promote these vital alternative paths to education. And by doing so, we will be working to solve our nation's workforce shortage crisis while promoting less expensive, but oftentimes more successful educational opportunities. I'm very excited to have a diverse group of small business owners, some of whom have gone through CTE and other training programs. Today, our witnesses will have the opportunity to share their stories, current economic and workforce challenges, and how CTE and apprenticeship programs help them become the business owners they are today. And so again, I want to thank all of you for being here with us, and I look forward to today's conversation. And with that, I'll yield to my distinguished ranking member from Kentucky, Mr. McGarvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I echo your words, and thank you for holding this vital hearing on alternative educational paths that can develop our nation's workforce. As you introduced one of your constituents who is here today, I would also like to introduce one of my constituents here today, Mr. Eric Elzy, who is a plumber and pipe fitter with Local 502 in the great Louisville, Kentucky. And he and I have talked about this a lot over the years. It's an honor to have you here to share those insights with the committee. As we all know, across this country, whether it's in New York, whether it's in Kentucky, our nation is experiencing a workforce shortage. Just last February, there were only 5.9 million unemployed people, and there were 9.9 million job openings. It means even if every person unemployed went to work, there would be 4 million job openings in this country. Small businesses are really and truly feeling this labor shortage as much or more than anyone else. Everywhere I go in my district and talk to people and I say, what's the number one concern? They say it's getting and keeping the right people here. As a result, I think these workforce development solutions are key. They are what we need to help businesses find the skilled labor they need and will prepare Americans for a better future. They'll do it without requiring individuals to make a substantial financial investment towards their education. That's why it's so important that we are talking about these other ways to get people employed, to get people into the skilled trades for good paying jobs where we know we have openings. So today we'll explore the workforce development programs from the lens of the construction sector, where these programs have been extremely successful in teaching people in apprenticeship programs and getting people into the trades and to work. It is estimated that in 2023 alone, the construction industry will have to recruit 546,000 workers on top of its regular pace of hiring just to keep up with the demand. And as we implement the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act over the next decade, that demand for workers is only going to continue to grow. So whether we're talking about apprenticeships, career and technical education, or any other workforce development initiative, it is imperative that we look for ways to incentivize their use and make them more attractive to new demographics of workers. Congress's investments in infrastructure will create more jobs and reach far beyond the construction sector. So we need to figure out ways to extend these programs into areas of our economy that have not traditionally been covered by these efforts. Finally, and most important for this committee, we need to ensure that workforce development programs are accessible to small employers because they are the ones who stand to benefit most. Last Congress, this committee focused on this topic with a series of hearings. Today's hearing and the introduction of 2 bipartisan bills to improve the understanding and utilization of vital workforce pipeline programs confirm this remains a priority for the new majority. I look forward to listening to the testimony of all of our witnesses, which will help inform our current and future efforts to build a strong pipeline of skilled workers. And I look forward to working with my colleagues to build a stronger, more robust workforce. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGarvey. At this point, I'd like to recognize the chairman of the Small Business Committee, Mr. Roger Williams from Texas, for his opening remarks. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate it. Good morning to all of you. We appreciate you coming here. I, too, am a small business owner back in Texas. So we're all talking to the choir here as we proceed to do some great things. And I want to thank my colleague, Marc Molinaro, for holding today's subcommittee hearing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that. And in my district in Texas and across the country, there are far too many windows plastered with help wanted signs. This has been especially challenging for many industries that require specialized skills. From builders to plumbers, electricians, and so many more, our economy does not work without skilled workers. And I can tell you we need welders in Texas, so send them our way. Need them badly. And not only are these vital trades struggling to fill open positions, they also can't keep up with replacing retiring workers. And for every worker entering the skilled workforce, 5 are leaving. This is simply unsustainable for an economy like ours. And there are too many young people who feel like they have no other choice but to attend a 4-year college and incur tens of thousands of dollars in debt. And the ones that don't, in Texas, we have 100,000 kids every year dropping out of school in the 9th grade. Imagine that, because they're losing hope. They don't think they can be a doctor or architect or whatever. So we need to make sure that they know there's opportunities out there that can get them instant opportunities to do great things. So, and college, we all know, isn't for everybody, and there are other learning avenues that can help young people pursue a rewarding career. So we cannot address the underlying issues in education with a one-size-fits-all strategy. And I hope today's discussion, which I know it will, can shine a light on how important these alternative paths of education are to both small businesses, our nation's youth, and the future of our country, and that's the most important thing. A check from a job is much better than a check from the government, and we need to fix that. So with that, thank you, Chairman Molinaro. I yield back my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You said that better and more brief than I did. That's right. You would make up for it. Let's begin by introducing our witnesses. It's my honor to introduce our first, Ms. Patrice Onwuka. Ms. Onwuka is the director of the Center for Economic Opportunity at the Independent Women's Forum, a leading national women's organization that's dedicated to developing and furthering policies that enhance women's freedom, opportunities, and overall well-being. The organization celebrates women's accomplishments and works to expand opportunities for women by supporting policies that include cutting down on burdensome federal regulations. Ms. Onwuka has over a decade of experience working on economic, technological, philanthropic, and criminal justice system issues. In addition to her work at the Independent Women's Forum, Ms. Onwuka co-hosts WMAL-FM's morning show O'Connor and Company, the leading talk radio station in the D.C. area every Friday. Ms. Onwuka is also involved in several philanthropic groups, including serving as a senior fellow with the Alliance for Charitable Excellence, a project of the Philanthropy Roundtable, and as Tony Blankley's fellow at the Steamboat Institute. I get it all. Born in the Caribbean, Ms. Onwuka grew up in Boston after immigrating with her family. She holds a bachelor's in economics and political science from Tufts University, as well as a master's in international relations from Boston College. Her expertise and passion to furthering opportunities for women make her an excellent voice to hear from today. Ms. Onwuka, thank you for joining us this morning, and we look forward to the conversation we'll have. At this point, I'd like to recognize my colleague, Mr. Elsie from Texas, to introduce his constituent who's appearing before us today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my honor to introduce my first witness, Ms. Melanie Rainey. Ms. Melanie Rainey is the president and CEO of Texo, a Texas-based construction association. Founded in 2009, Texo was created to build a strong and vibrant construction community in North and East Texas. Comprised of over 300 members who contribute over $15 billion to the greater economy, Texo is one of the largest construction trade associations in Texas and one of the largest in the country. Since Ms. Rainey joined Texo in 2013, she's played a key role in growing the association, where she led member programs and service efforts until being promoted to president and CEO in 2015. A graduate of the OU in Oklahoma, Ms. Rainey majored in architecture and minored in construction science management. In 2016, Ms. Rainey was an honoree 40 under 40 in the country for Building, Design, and Construction's National Magazine Award. She's also been an active member of the Foundation for Young Women's Leadership Academy in Fort Worth for over a decade with a focus on STEM education. With her extensive experience and passion for advancing the construction industry, Ms. Rainey is well situated to provide important insight into how we can strengthen workforce development in America. Ms. Rainey, thank you for joining us this morning. I'm looking forward to our conversation. Mr. Elsie, you're missing a couple of letters. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Elsie. And with that, let me introduce today's third witness and a constituent of mine, Mr. Bruno Schickel. Mr. Schickel is the president of Schickel Construction, a small business located in Dryden, New York. Founded in 1985, Schickel Construction has worked on over 200 residential and light commercial projects in Tompkins County, including Ithaca, New York, Trumansburg, Hector, and Aurora. Mr. Schickel employs 15 people at his company, has well over 30 years of experience in the construction industry. His company works on everything from dream houses to cottage communities and rental properties that have garnered universal acclaim. In addition to helming his own business, Mr. Schickel has served as the president of the local Builders Association, as well as president of the New York State Builders Association, and as national vice president of the National Association of Home Builders. His experience working on a diverse set of projects, as well as his passion for the construction industry, makes Mr. Schickel an excellent witness for us here today, and to hear from on the evolving challenges facing his industry, particularly with workforce development. Mr. Schickel, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining us this morning. We look forward to our conversation. And with that, let me recognize again Ranking Member Mr. McGarvey to introduce the minorities witness for today's hearing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And for Mr. Eric Elsie, there might be a few letters missing, but I noticed the haircut's hereditary. Our final witness today is Mr. Eric Elsie, Assistant Business Manager for the United Association of Plumbers, Pipe Fitters, and Service Technicians in Local 502 here in Louisville, Kentucky. Originally trained through Local 502's apprenticeship program, Mr. Elsie has been a journeyman plumber for more than 20 years. For more than a decade, he has also been heavily involved in educating other professionals in his field, serving both as an instructor and as a training coordinator, where he was responsible for approximately 350 trainees. Mr. Elsie has been appointed to the Kentucky State AFL-CIO General Executive Board and the Kentucky Department of Housing, Building, and Construction Advisory Committee. He also serves as a vice president for the Greater Louisville Building and Construction Trades Council. Mr. Elsie is also a friend, and I have been out to his facility, watched the respect he has among the people he's trained and the people whose lives he's changed. He does an amazing job in what he does for his field and for our community, and I'm so proud to have him representing our hometown and Local 502 here in Washington, D.C. Thank you for being here, Mr. Elsie, and I yield back.
I just remind my colleagues not to call into question the follically challenged. I'm just saying this, regardless of last names. So we appreciate you all being here. Thanks, Mr. McGarvey. And before recognizing the witnesses for your testimony, I just want to remind you that oral testimony is restricted to 5 minutes in length. There will be a little red light in front of you, and when that light clicks on, if you wouldn't mind concluding your comments and beginning to wrap up. Otherwise, they have given me a modestly sized gavel to make use of only if necessary. And with that, I now recognize Ms. Onwuka for her 5-minute opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Thank you for ranking member and the committee members who are here. My name is Patrice Onwuka, and I'm the director of the Center for Economic Opportunity at Independent Women's Forum. You know, we advocate for policies that enhance people's freedoms and opportunities, as well as their well-being, as the chairman mentioned. So I'll give you a broad picture of where we are in the economy when it comes to labor force challenges. Today, more Americans hold a college degree than ever before. However, fewer students are coming from lower middle and working class backgrounds. Both younger and older adults feel the pressure to pursue higher education and unfortunately are accumulating high debt to fund it. However, employers and workers increasingly question the value of degrees in terms of the cost and workforce preparedness. Some 70 million workers actually don't possess a college degree at all, and their labor force outcomes are being challenged right now. Now, we have a pandemic labor market that's beginning to ease, but employers are still grappling with widespread long-term labor shortages, driven by cultural and demographic changes, that, as well as well-intentioned policies that have limited opportunities. So I'll explain a little bit further. Now, as we've heard today, American businesses are facing an unprecedented challenge stemming from labor shortages. We've got 9.9 million open positions, 5.8 million unemployed Americans. There's a mismatch there. Labor force participation, interestingly, is below pre-pandemic levels and below pre-Great Recession levels. So people are falling out of the labor force. This is stunting economic growth for small businesses. According to the National Federation of Independent Business, 1 in 3 small business owners has openings for skilled workers, and 1 in 5 has openings for unskilled workers. The national implications are very obvious. Productivity, growth, supply chain, all of these interrelated factors are affected by this labor shortage. However, we see these labor shortages more pronounced in some industries more than others. The skilled, the technical occupations. These are middle-skill jobs that deliver middle-skill and middle-class opportunities and lifestyles. And very often, they don't require a college degree necessarily. You'll hear from my colleagues on the panel who are immersed in the day-to-day in the construction industry, for example, where there's a 500,000 gap of workers. But as I've researched, it's not limited just to the trades. All of these industries across the economy are suffering. So how did we get here? Well, I'll posit 3 different forces. Number 1, the Every Kid to College movement. This education revolution imagined a fully college-educated workforce. But this is a one-size-fits-all approach that doesn't take into consequence the unintended consequences. It stigmatized the trades, directed students away from entry-level careers in industries that can actually deliver middle-class lifestyles with ample opportunities and entrepreneurship potential, which a lot of young people love, without the debt. The cost of college became untethered from the value of the degrees. And unfortunately, we've got to acknowledge this. Government-subsidized student loans are fueling this increase in college costs today. Number 2, we've heard a little bit about the retirements. About 10,000 baby boomers reach retirement age every day in the United States. According to the Census Bureau, by 2030, the entire generation will have retired, potentially. But this creates opportunities, obviously. It also creates a loss of knowledge and experience. And then the third big force, degree inflation. This is the proliferation of degree requirements for jobs that didn't have those requirements before. Very often, employers routinely use college degrees to screen out applicants. According to Harvard Business School, 61% of employers polled rejected applicants who had relevant skills and experience because they did not have a degree. Talk about a barrier to opportunity. Men have been hurt by degree inflation, and blacks and Hispanics, people who don't necessarily have high college graduation rates, also suffer. Employers, though, pay the price as well. Middle-skilled jobs, they're difficult to fill, feeding this worker shortage, and wage inflation drives up the cost for business because you have to spend more to attract high-degree earners. Unfortunately, a degree is not also or always a signal of the soft skills that you may be looking for. So what can we do? With my last 39 seconds, I've got some policy solutions, but I'll just name them. Number one, we've got to fight degree inflation. And this is already underway, but there are opportunities for Congress and lawmakers at every level to participate on a bipartisan force. Number two, reform excessive credentialing. Credentialing can be great. It can be a great alternative, but it can also be a barrier to opportunity. Again, there's bipartisan agreement there. And number three, protecting independent contracting. Many young people want to be their own small business owners. They should be allowed to do so, and there are ways for Congress as well as states to protect that. Government policies can be well-intended, but they can create barriers to opportunity, and that's where we want to stop that. Thank you.
Thank you for that very much. And with that, I'd like to recognize Ms. Rainey for her 5-minute remarks.
Chairman Molinaro, Ranking Member McGarvey, and members of the Subcommittee on Innovation, Entrepreneurship, and Workforce Development. Thank you for inviting me to testify on the importance of a well-trained workforce for the construction industry and the value of a career in the industry. My name is Melanie Rainey. I have spent my career in the construction industry, beginning as an architect and now as President and CEO of Texo, the largest commercial contractors association in Texas, representing construction member companies that do more than $14 billion of work annually in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. I am testifying on behalf of the Associated General Contractors of America, AGC, the leading association in the construction industry representing more than 27,000 firms. The country is experiencing the greatest labor shortage in generations, with acute shortages in the construction industry. The good news is the industry is making great investments in local workforce development, and Congress can help. Recent federal infrastructure investments in combination with expected private sector investments will provide many future workers with good-paying jobs and long careers if we can find a way to encourage more people to pursue construction careers. Congress can help put more high school and college graduates into high-paying construction careers by increasing funding and local flexibility. Doing so will not only provide essential construction skills, but also serve as valuable recruiting tools by signaling to students and young adults that construction is a career path worth considering. By giving construction a starring role in rebuilding the economy, a new generation of workers can be brought into the construction trades for careers where they can economically advance and prosper. According to an AGC Autodesk 2022 workforce survey, construction workforce shortages risk undermining infrastructure projects, as most contractors struggle to fill open positions. According to the JOLT survey from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, contractors wanted to hire more than twice as many workers as they were able to hire. In Texas, the industry struggles to fill positions for record-sized projects. The reason firms have difficulty finding workers, even though hourly pay in construction averages 19% more than the overall private sector, is the country has essentially dismantled the once robust pipeline for recruiting and preparing new construction workers. In Texas, Texo has prioritized recruiting workers to the construction industry and providing a skilled workforce. The multifaceted tactics include workforce development initiatives and craft training programs. The Texo Foundation is active in Dallas-Fort Worth area schools, connecting students to the industry, and much of its success is due to involvement of employers. The Construction Education Foundation, the craft training arm of Texo, has over 2,600 students enrolled in training programs with 140 participating employers across 8 trades. The Earn and Learn model offers graduates a recognized credential that certifies proficiency in one of 8 trades. The participants are paid by an employer. Employers gain access to a skilled talent pool that improves productivity and reduces turnover. Meanwhile, new workers learn valuable and portable skills without having to accumulate college debt. Instead, employers bear much of the cost for training. This is a very different model than our current approach to collegiate education, where students bear most of the costs regardless of employment prospects. Federal officials are spending far more to encourage new workers to go to college instead of pursuing rewarding careers in construction. For every dollar the federal government spends urging students to enroll in college and enter the service sector, it invests 20 cents in career and technical education. This higher education bias is doing a disservice to our nation's youth by encouraging a massive accumulation of debt that doesn't often lead to a career in their field of study. CTE programs are among the most valuable education programs. However, programs are expensive to administer and fund, with cost-intensive classrooms and equipment and quality instructors in short supply. Finally, recent major infrastructure investments from Congress, such as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the CHIPS Act, are intended to address many documented needs. However, some of the programs are imposing workforce requirements that further limit the ability of construction contractors to perform the work. Imposing arbitrary workforce requirements that further narrow the pool of workers that qualify to work on federal infrastructure projects will only make it harder, longer, and costlier for these projects to be built. Thank you again for inviting AGC to testify before the committee today, and I look forward to answering any questions you have.
Thank you, Ms. Rainey. And now, Mr. Schickel for 5 minutes opening comments.
Good morning. I'm an owner of a small business in the Ithaca, New York area. My company, Schickel Construction, specializes in residential and light commercial work. Now, I'm the first person in my family in many generations to have not gone to college. Being the 9th child of 13 children, I think my parents were relieved when I decided to take a different path, given the financial burdens of college tuition. I like to say that going to college is not the only way to get an education. It just happens to be the easier way, but the more expensive way. I attended shop class in high school, and I built a lot of great furniture then. I wanted to make things. I did not want to go to college. After high school, I joined the Carpenters Union and did residential construction for a while. Then over the next 10 years, I worked for a variety of different companies in on-the-job training. At 28, I decided that I was ready to go out on my own, and I started my own company in 1984, and have consistently employed 10 to 15 people for the past 39 years. Recently, I polled my employees to see how many went to shop class in high school. 60% of them did. Hands-on and on-the-job training is how I learned the construction industry. I like to say that anybody can learn how to build a house hands-on, but not everybody can easily learn how to run a business. I learned how to run a business by attending the annual International Builders Show sponsored by NAHB, or the National Association of Home Builders. Every year I'd take part in their seminars that they had to offer. There is little difference between the unemployment rate of workers that get a college degree and workers that don't, but there is a big difference in their debt burden. This debt burden sets young people back decades in terms of their economic security. Now, if you go back to the mid-'80s, early '80s, I was hiring for a construction company, and we had workers lined up out the door, literally, looking for work. Fast forward to 2008 and 9, that recession, I was lucky if I would get 1 or 2 applicants a week. Now the situation currently is literally nobody will apply. And sometimes I just simply give up altogether and just stop trying. In my mind, we have a short-term problem and we have a long-term problem. The short-term problem is we're facing a historic labor shortage right now. Everyone reports the same problem. There is nobody to hire. Just think about how much more our economy could be expanding and growing if businesses could hire the people they need. I know my business personally could increase 20 or 30% easily The National Association of Home Builders estimated next 2 years we're short 2.2 million jobs. And without those, 1 million homes won't be built. Currently, this country has an unprecedented number of jobs going unfilled. At the same time, we have an unprecedented number of people not working and collecting government benefits. Clearly, something is seriously out of whack. The long-term problem, over the past 50 years, the workforce balance has shifted. Few people want to make things now. Too much emphasis has been put on attending college and too little on the rewards of jobs in the trades. Resources for vocational training and technical training have declined. Many schools stop offering shop classes altogether. The vocational track has become the poor cousin of the college track. We need to restore some balance. I would say that hands-on and on-the-job training is a good place to start. Let's bring back shop class to high schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schickel. And now for 5 minutes, the other Mr. Elsie.
Good morning, committee members. Thank you for the honor of speaking before you today. My name is Eric Elsie, and I'm a proud 26-year member of the United Association of Plumbers, Pipe Fitters, and HVACR Service Technicians, a local 502 in Louisville, Kentucky. I've held various positions in my local union, including apprentice plumber, journeyman plumber, general foreman, superintendent, apprentice instructor, training coordinator for local 502's training center, instructor nationally for the United Association, and business representative, the job I currently hold. I'm here today to speak on you in the importance of apprenticeships in the construction industry, especially the industry that I represent. My experience started in 1997 as a registered apprentice. I worked under the tutelage of many passionate, educated plumbers and plumbing instructors for 5 years until I met the requirements to graduate in 2002. The passion these members have shown me led me to return the passion to young men and women currently making up Local 502's membership as an apprentice instructor and as their training coordinator so that I could have a hands-on experience in their education. Some of these members are still my mentors today, and I am forever indebted to them for the education they provided to me when I was a young man. I've been appointed to several boards representing Local 502 in the state of Kentucky, either by my business manager or Governor Andy Beshear. Some of these being Greater Louisville Building Construction Trades Council Vice President, Kentucky State AFL-CIO Executive Board Member, Department of Housing, Building, and Construction Advisory Committee. And I can assure you that among other topics covered in these meetings of these committees, the conversation seems to always find its way to worker shortages in the state of Kentucky. We bounce ideas around the room on how each organization is planning on making sure manpower requests are met now and in the future, which always includes apprenticeships. Apprenticeships are required to register with the state in which they are located, as well as the Department of Labor, thus having to improve how money is spent, retention rates, provide curriculums for approval, among other things. This helps ensure that registered apprenticeships meet required levels of quality and that members' contributions, or in some cases, federal and state grants, are used responsibly. With my experience as an apprentice instructor and training coordinator locally, I have personally witnessed how valuable the education provided to our apprentices shows, versus when someone who has taken a 6-week course to pass a license exam or someone who has some field education but that's all they have shines through. Most union apprenticeships have earn while you learn programs. This allows the apprentice to take classroom workshop learning and translate it into their field of work, and vice versa. This is also a great way to learn for someone who is more of a hands-on learner, all while maintaining full-time employment and benefits to provide for themselves and, if applicable, to their families. Apprenticeships have proven to be very beneficial to businesses, both large and small. Larger businesses, in some cases, are capable of developing in-house apprenticeships, while smaller businesses may not be able to afford to perform this type of training on their own. In the case of Local 502, we partner with contractors that have anywhere from 350 Local 502 members down to just 2 members. We are able to help all contractors, notwithstanding their size, following one guiding principle. We train apprentices to perform a job skill, not a job skill for a certain type of contractor. Some smaller businesses in years past have been intimidated to approach unions with the fear of cost of becoming a union contractor. In recent years, Local 502 has seen a rise in smaller contractors becoming signatory to us. This is from the education that they are receiving at our apprenticeship. We offer a class to every member on starting a new business and how Local 502 can assist in the financial burden of someone just starting out. Since implementing this class, we have had several members take this class and have had 5 new members start businesses. Recently, Congress enacted legislation regarding infrastructure. This one bill will require hundreds of thousands of qualified workers for the foreseeable future. One way Congress could help with this shortage, I believe, is to help promote apprenticeships in the workforce as a career choice, the same way a 4-year degree is promoted. In my profession, people have chosen to become a plumber, pipe fitter, or HVACR service technician, no different than choosing to become a doctor or a lawyer. The education is different, but not less important. In fact, in our opinions, the education is more important to the health and safety of Americans. Again, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. It's truly been my honor and privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Elsie. We appreciate you all being here with us today. At this point, we'll move on to members' questions, and I'd like to yield myself 5 minutes to begin. Mr. Schickel, I want you to dive a little bit deeper into rural America and upstate New York. Could you speak to a degree about the specific challenges you face in recruiting and finding applicants for work?
Thank you. I think the biggest problem right now is that nobody is applying. It is a very vexing situation. Now, not literally nobody's applying, but figuratively it is. I have hired a couple people recently that, over maybe 3 or 4 months, some people did come forward. And I offered them a job, and they never showed up. They literally never showed up for work, never called, and never contacted. I'm not sure why that is. I think the balance is just out of whack, and I don't know why that is. But thank you.
So what those specific? So let's dive a little bit.
Yeah.
What specifically, though, do you think is keeping folks from coming to work? Why? To be with some detail. What are you hearing in certainly your area of the industry?
It's a vexing question because I think the assumption is that they're being well rewarded. The incentives not to work are so great or too generous that the alternative of working is not attractive enough. I think that's what I hear.
And you can say it. Where we are in our state, there are government supports that are discouraging people to reenter.
Without question.
Okay.
Without question.
And so, what other than perhaps using those tools to incentivize work, what would be what could government's role be to get folks back, at least again, rural New York, in your line of work?
I think people have to understand that careers in the trades are a very noble and good profession, and they pay well. And I think it's a promotional thing. I think that so much emphasis has been put on getting a college education. So many resources are committed to that, and not enough is put on hands-on work and making things. And I think that balance just has to be changed, and that's the long-term goal or long-term challenge. And then the short-term challenge is getting people to step forward.
Thank you. I think it's a good, actually, segue for me to ask Ms. Rainey a question. So I often say my stepdad's a brilliant mathematician, so long as he's under the hood of a car. And test taking and the challenge, certainly in public school, I should probably say Skip Van Anden is and remains a great mechanic. My dad doesn't often get in the congressional record anyway, so I should probably acknowledge that. but the challenge from high school and test taking and so on was overwhelming. And ultimately, I will say the in his day and now and certainly today, the demand to only learn a certain way, to be educated a certain way, is demoralizing. What your effort through the Texas High School Outreach Committee, I think, is an important sort of a connection in creating that pipeline. Can you talk a little bit about what the committee does and how you might inspire young people to actually move down this path?
I can. I think that's what's so exciting about what we're doing is we're taking people who have incredible careers in construction and we're putting them in front of these high school students who are studying CTE, but they actually don't know how to get into the industry. So there's a disconnect between you're studying CTE in high school, but you don't know how to go get into the industry. And you don't necessarily know, there's a perception issue with construction. It's your last resort. So if you fail at everything else, then you can get into construction. And so we're putting people in front of them to change that perception and give them hope that this is a bright career for you. We show them the salary ranges. We show them people who have progressed through the trades. We put people in front of them that look like them so that they know construction is open to anybody. And so we're giving them hope by getting in front of them early. We start in middle school, and then we're with them all along the high school journey, and we're bringing them into the industry.
Thank you for that. I just think the one-size-fits-all education structure is not only depleting the workforce, it's demoralizing some of our brightest minds, and I'm grateful for the work that you do. And with that, my time's expired. I'll recognize Ranking Member McGarvey for your 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll start off with a point of agreement where we shouldn't have the one-size-fits-all model. I think that's what we're doing here. And Mr. Schickel, I really appreciate what you said about showing that the trades are a noble career. And I want to stress that what we're highlighting here today is not just a job. It's a career in the trades where you can learn to do something, make something, really contribute to our society, and provide a good life for you and your family. Mr. Elsie, I appreciate you being here today, for being such a mentor and teacher in the trades in our community. We know that apprenticeships offer an effective model of workforce development, especially in the construction industry, where you do have to have that hands-on training, Mr. Schickel. Mr. Elsie, can you explain why these apprenticeships are so widely used in the construction industry and why apprenticeships outmatch other forms of training?
Thank you. I think that when in my situation, again, we employ plumbers, pipe fitters, HVACR service technicians. So our contractors, when they call us and are looking for, they can call for a specialty. I want a plumber apprentice, first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year, whatever year you want. That's what we're going to send you. We're going to send you that type of apprentice in whatever trade that you're looking for. And I'd like to also say, referring back to what she down at the end said, I mean, it's hard to reach these young kids too and make them understand how to get into a field. So, we're doing a lot of outreach in these schools now, in the high school level with our coordinators and showing them what it's like to be a plumber, a pipe fitter, an HVACR service technician, and where they can go with it.
And you mentioned businesses calling you asking for a certain thing. One of the things you talked about in your testimony was sometimes a hesitancy of smaller contractors to use union labor, but that recently you've seen an uptick in some of these contractors saying that they want to become a union. Can you elaborate on that a little bit about the value of apprenticeships from the employer perspective and how that is helping with the unions?
Yeah, like the smaller contract, like I said in my testimony, in the years past, smaller contractors were very leery of saying, I want to be a union contractor for the simple cost of the fringe benefit package with the wages also. And it scared them away thinking that there's another cost attached to it just to say, I'm a union contractor. Well, there's not a cost attached to that. But in order to pay the wages in the fringe benefit packages, that does come at a cost. But you're getting a more well-trained individual and you can always have someone when you need someone. So what we've done is we have what's called a market recovery fund that our members have decided to start in order to grow our local and our market share in our area. So if a member decides, or not just a member, any small contractor in our area decides, hey, I want to be a union contractor, they come in and sit down and talk to us, and we say, hey, we can help you for the first 6 months to a year with your fringe benefits. with this market recovery fund, and we'll help you get your feet on the ground and get some money established for yourself before we don't want to see you fail. We want to see you succeed and stay a union contractor for the next 100 years.
And your story is very compelling too. You decided to pursue a career in the trades, turn down a scholarship to go to college. What made you change course, and how has pursuing an apprenticeship helped you professionally? And I guess, in the last couple of minutes, what advice do you have for young people considering joining an apprenticeship program?
I did go to college. I was on a baseball scholarship, and it did not take me long to understand that I was not a college student. I was a baseball player, and you can't do both. I mean, you have to do both at the same time. You can't pick one, or you gotta do both. So my grades were not good enough. My baseball coach said, "Hey, you're not going to be able to keep your scholarship." And I was from a family that, God bless my dad, he worked hard, but he didn't make a good living. And he couldn't afford to send me to school anymore. So I had to come back and get a job, and I was actually found on a softball field. As a college baseball player playing slow pitch softball, you're found pretty easily. So I was picked up by the union team, and the union team said, "Hey, would you like to be a pre-apprentice?" And I didn't know what that was. They handed me a packet, said, "Take it home and talk to your parents about it." I'm a 19-year-old kid. I went home and showed it to my dad. My dad told me I was an idiot if I didn't take advantage of this. So 26 years later, here I am. And it's been great to me because when in my younger years, as I talked about my mentors, as a 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kid, I didn't care about a retirement. I didn't care about health benefits. But 26 years later, I have a pension that's going to provide for me and my wife. When I retire, I'm going to be eligible to retire at the age of 57. You can't hardly say that anymore in this day and age. So this union, my education, has provided very well for me and my family for the last 26 years, and I'm proud to say that I'm from that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Halsey. Appreciate your testimony. And like you stood out on the softball field, this is a bipartisan committee, but we have a partisan event on June 14th, which is the congressional baseball game. If you still have any eligibility left, and we can get you in. That's right. It's hardball. It's hardball. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. McGarvey. It's hardball, and we also cannot recruit from the committees. No, I think it's an ethics.
Thought I'd try.
Thank you, though. Very, very good effort. With that, I'd like to recognize Mr. Halsey from Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. I love having my staff prepare all these questions, and as I hear the conversation, I love where we end up going. And this old generation that we're talking about, you guys are trying to find to fill these jobs, there are a number of issues that have occurred over the last 5 years that have led to a decline in our workforce, and everybody is struggling from it. When I go try to find folks to apply to the military academies, we can't find it. To enlist in the military, to become first responders, to any number of trades. And if we're going to talk about fathers, I'd like to say my father-in-law, Bob Hobeck, is a master builder as well, so he's now in the register, so he's proud. But it's hard to find all these people. And then COVID really kind of upset the apple cart, and then video games did too, and whatever they're doing online, and the monetization of the internet has made it difficult for you to find that 18 to 22-year-old who you need right now, who they're going to probably stay with that path for the rest of their lives. But it also occurs to me that we have a guidance counselor problem, I think, nationwide. It doesn't matter what region you're in, guidance counselors need to be finding these kids in school and saying, you know what, do you want to go to college? Well, yes, I do. Or no, I don't. Well, in case you don't, here's where you need to be going. But to your point about wood shop, I think it was you that mentioned wood shop. Yeah, we need that stuff back in junior high. And show that people working with your hands and having a career for your whole life is extremely important. So I get to the questions now. So everything is a struggle to find folks. Ms. Rainey, are you finding a light at the end of the tunnel after we've come out of COVID, monies are starting to be pulled back, and people are kind of looking around trying to find a job? Are we seeing the light at the end of the tunnel? And if not, when do you think we will see that?
I think we're seeing glimmers of light. We have pockets of huge success stories coming from schools. If we're active in the schools and we build relationships with these students for 4 years, they are coming into our industry. So I can tell you success. Congressman Williams talked about needing welders In the state, we have a school that sends us about 25 welders every single year. They graduate and they come into our industry. But that is a very specific school that we're targeted and we are in partnership with for 4 years to get those graduates. So we are seeing glimmers. What we have to do is make it a scalable approach. DFW has 8 million people in our metroplex. It's a massive, there's massive schools that we have to go find. So making that scalable is what we have to do, and continue to educate those counselors so that they are pushing people into our programs.
But you are starting to see it get better.
We are.
Okay. Ms. Onwuka, what policy change do you believe would have the most significant impact on fixing this labor force shortage?
Oh, where do I begin? I will
You
say.
got 30 seconds to solve the whole world's problems.
I know. I mean, I think number one, related to what we're talking about here, which is just the push back against the Every Kid to College movement. Part of the reason why guidance counselors have been pushing kids to college is because there's been some financial incentives, and there's this idea that schools want to have a college graduation rate or a college participation rate for their high school students going to college, and so there's some financial incentive there. There's also just this idea that we are sending lots of kids to college. That's changing, and I think because we have $1.7 trillion in student loan debt, younger people are recognizing that they don't want to go down the path that I, as a millennial, did and incur a lot of debt. So what can we do? I talked about degree inflation, fighting degree inflation. Absolutely. Private employers are getting rid of their degree requirements for positions that they don't need to see, that they don't need that. This preceded the pandemic and accelerated during the pandemic, which is great. Policymakers, state level and federal, have an opportunity to look and take an audit of every single open position and decide, does this actually need a degree? Can this job be done without that? We're seeing in states like Maryland, I believe it's Utah and one other state, where those governors decided we're going to eliminate all degree requirements. That opens up jobs for people who may have years of experience in the workforce but have been locked out of those positions. So that's one way of attacking this problem.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Elzey. And with that, I'd like to recognize Mr. Pappas from New Hampshire for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our panel for their contributions to the discussion here today. I think this is the most important conversation happening on the Hill here today, and I see this all across my district. I was at a steel fabricator not too long ago in Candia, New Hampshire, Atlantic Bridge and Engineering, and they are obviously looking for workers. They're utilizing every square inch of their facility as they seek to scale up to meet the demand with respect to major public works projects and a construction boom that we're seeing in southern New Hampshire and the greater Boston area. So that's good news, but it presents a serious challenge to this company to be able to compete. One thing I wanted to ask Ms. Rainey about is career technical education. You talked a little bit about building pipelines, which are crucially important. That partnership between the private sector and CTE programs is necessary to be able to highlight the opportunities that are out there to young people. But of course, our CTE programs need funding. They need modern equipment. They need adequate instruction to be able to facilitate the kind of change that we need to see in this country. So can you talk about a successful model in terms of a career and technical education program and the kind of partnership with the private sector that's necessary?
Yeah, I think you actually just hit on one of the biggest challenges we have is when these students in the state of Texas in 8th grade, you have to choose whether you're going to go the CTE route in high school or a college-bound route in high school. So if you choose the CTE program, you choose a specific thing that you're going to study. So the construction labs are very expensive because the equipment is expensive, and then finding instructors because the industry is hiring all the instructors right now. So when we go in and partner with a school and supply the equipment and we help them find instructors and we are physically in the classroom at least once a week or once every couple of weeks, that is a partnership. And so when those students graduate, we're finding success and then working at the firms that are in those classrooms. So to us, it's a partnership where the industry is physically recruiting middle school and high school students and changing that perception of what it's like to be in construction, and then they're hired out of high school to join the apprenticeship training program. So there are pockets of success stories we're seeing all across DFW.
Yeah, well, thanks for those thoughts. And Mr. Elsie, I appreciate your presence here, and I think you did a great job highlighting registered apprenticeship programs. And I've gotten to know some in my district. I've met people who are changing career paths mid-career. I met a woman who was a paraprofessional, had trouble paying her bills. She was working in the school system, but she got trained up as a union carpenter and is looking forward to a great lifetime in that industry. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about some of the barriers that people might face to access these programs. I know a lot has been said about why people are on the sidelines of the workforce. I know based on my conversations that it's a number of things that come into play. But how can we open up more of these opportunities to folks who are either just starting out or mid-career or looking for a chance to get ahead and stay ahead?
I know that Congress doesn't promote, four-year schools, colleges, and trade schools, but just a promotion. In our area, what we're trying to do is we're spending lots of money advertising in our city. And Congressman McGarvey can probably say that you can't drive anywhere in the city of Louisville without seeing a billboard that says Local 502, or a commercial on television, or a commercial on the radio that says Local 502. And again, like you said, that's just, some people say, well, what is Local 502? So it's hard. It's a very difficult task to reach these young people because for so long they've been told the four-year degree is the way to go. So we're in a process, I think, of the vocational school is coming back around. And while it's coming back around, these organizations like us need to take advantage of being able to go and visit these schools, set up to these schools, and get rid of the barriers and make these kids understand that this is a good living, good pay, good benefits. So the barriers, I guess what you're trying to get me to answer is, the barriers are there, and I don't really know the answer other than to continue to put it in front of their face, to continue to say, this is a good living. Just because you're working in the heat and the cold and you're hot and sweaty and you're dirty doesn't mean it's not honorable and you cannot provide for your families, because I'm a testament that is wrong. I used to be the dirty guy that came home and played with my children in the yard with dirty clothes on.
Well, I think that's important. And look, there are a number of things we have to address as we build capacity and skills in our workforce, including immigration, including the addiction and mental health crisis that we're experiencing in this country. But we also need to continue to work together on this mindset shift. There is no one right path. And there are great careers out there in the trades. And so by working together and highlighting those opportunities and making sure we're getting to kids early is a great way to do it. So thanks for your thoughts here today. I yield back.
Thank you, sir. And with that, I'd like to recognize Chairman Williams for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a great panel. We appreciate all of you. And as I mentioned earlier, back in Texas, 100,000 kids a year dropping out of the ninth grade. That's just in Texas alone. Losing hope. Don't think they can be something they don't want to be. And I think we all hit it on the head is we need to promote this, because the truth of the matter is we all know that once they get into the career opportunities and do some things, that they make more money than the guys that everybody thinks got money. I remember the cold snap we had 2 years ago. Nobody that I know of, called the plumber or the welder or the carpenter and said, how much you going to charge me if you come out here? It was 0 degrees, for crying out loud. Just save me. And, so there's not many businesses like that. So we need to promote that, and we need to make sure these kids understand that there's a lot of hope after the ninth grade in these in these industries. So, a lot of them don't even know that career and technical education programs exist. And I know before I got here, I heard somebody talk about the fact that plumbers metal shop and wood shop, you had to take that when I was in school in the 50s. And we need to get back to that. So, Mr. Rainey, let me ask you a question. Can you elaborate on the work TXO to educate young people about the opportunities that are out there? Ms. Rainey. We flew up on the plane together.
We did.
Yeah.
So TXO Foundation is active in around 75 high schools in the Dallas-Fort Worth region, and we're working with around 7,000 students in the DFW area. So, and when you look at how many ISDs, that's a small amount compared to how many we have to go reach. But we're active on advisory councils. We're active in the classrooms. Like I've said earlier, we're changing the perception of what it's like to be in construction and showing them a path forward.
Great. You're doing a good job. Ms. An Woo Ka, you talked about how college is getting more expensive. We know that, right? And yet I haven't seen any additional return on investment for students. So what is driving this disconnect, do you think, in our education system?
Well, the disconnect when it comes to the every kid to college model is from the cost standpoint. I think you look at funding, and part of it is just that the ability for students to access federal funds, and the fact that the federal government really is subsidizing the rising cost of college. Let me give you an interesting statistic here. For every dollar that the federal government puts into college in subsidized loans, colleges raise their costs by 60 cents. So there's this cycle of, well, we can charge more because the federal government is going to subsidize. At the same time, young people feel, well, college is the only route, so I've got to take out the student loans, and that's where you're getting this vicious cycle.
You know, I've got a bill that would have information about these programs on the Department of Education's website right before a student submits their paperwork to take out student loans, make them aware there's options out there.
Transparency, very good.
Yeah, and Mr. Schickel, you've got a great story about taking the leap of faith when you were 28 to start your own business. Now, there's no universal path you can take to start your own small business. We know that. But for all young people who are nervous about going off on their own and starting a small business, can you describe the steps you took to start your business all those years ago, right? And how you learned the intricacies of operating your own business?
Thank you. You know, I think, as I said in my testimony, it's pretty easy, relatively easy to learn how to build a house, but it's tough to run a business successfully. And I took advantage of the educational opportunities every year that the National Association of Home Builders provided with their annual International Builders Show. It was a 3-day extravaganza of probably 100 to 150 different seminars you could take about every imaginable thing. And I really mined that for the knowledge and the expertise and the networking that was available on those occasions. And then every year I just honed my skills and worked and worked and worked to improve my abilities.
And you opened it up in the morning and you locked it up at night, didn't you?
Oh,
huh?
Absolutely.
Well, Ms. An Woo Ka, I'll quickly here ask you a question. Can you talk about credentially issues that prevent people from going into certain careers?
Sure. And occupational licensing refers to just the licenses for someone to, participate in any type of occupation. It's really a state-level issue. It's supposed to signal that someone has the training, knowledge, or education that they need. Sometimes it can become a barrier to opportunity, particularly for immigrants, for people who have criminal records, which a lot of young people have, unfortunately, today, and for women, particularly military spouses who can't transfer their licenses from state to state.
Well, my time is up. I'll just say that the circle of an economy or a business or anything else is not completed till you fill the gap of the people we're talking about. We need always be an issue we need to continue to fight. I yield my time back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your leadership of the Small Business Committee and your faith in this subcommittee's work. I want to thank all of our witnesses for being here with us today. I agree with Mr. Pappas. This perhaps is maybe one of the most important conversations occurring on the Hill. In order to rebuild the American economy, we have to inspire folks not only to work but to achieve success, whether that's through the trades or developing your own business, encouraging that and breaking down some of those obstacles critically important. So with that, without objection, members have 5 legislative days to submit additional materials and written questions for the witnesses to the chair, which will be forwarded to the witnesses. And at this point, I'd ask witnesses to please respond promptly should that occur. And if there is no further business without objection, the committee is adjourned.